there, Robert John Hadfield here again from Audiomover, making another little video talking about analog stuff. And today we're going to be opening up, literally opening up. We're not going to just look inside the case. We're going to open up the cassette and look inside the cassette and look at the tape. So we're going to do something a little bit different here today. And so, and full disclosure as we get started on this particular video, I'm a huge fan of U2. And we're going to look inside. This is Achtung Baby, which was one of their most successful records. We're looking at a cassette tape right now, but this was amazing. Now my personal favorite U2 album is The Unforgettable Fire. That's the one that has the song Pride in the Name of Love, and it actually has a song called Unforgettable Fire, which to me is might be my favorite U2 song. It's so awesome, and that's on that album. And I thought they really, the original U2 sound, that's where it just kind of, it really hit its peak. I mean, it was so amazing. The Unforgettable Fire was such a great album. It came right after War. War is where I really felt like they kind of found where they were going, and then Unforgettable Fire, they reached into this classic U2 sound. And then what was so amazing about U2 was that then they just made almost an abrupt change. So when the next album came out, The Joshua Tree, it was disconnected from what they did before. And that was part of the beauty of what U2 did, is that they reinvented themselves over and over again. So they did the Joshua Tree, and it had kind of an Old West kind of feel in parts of that album. And then they went on this tour afterwards where they filmed some of the concert, and then they started just filming themselves going around America. And so that album that had that, they put out a movie and a whole live album called Rattle and Hum, and it kind of documented that whole experience that they had touring and then playing live on the tour for Joshua Tree. Well, they finished that tour. Rattle and Hum was a huge hit. As I recall, the movie was played in theaters, and it was a really, really big deal. But what was so incredible is after that, then they reinvented themselves again. And that was this album right here, was Achtung Baby. This was the reinvention, the reinvention of U2, which they just kept doing. They kept inventing themselves and finding new styles and new direction, which is incredible when you consider these were just, these were four dudes that, I mean, it wasn't this, there was nothing really spectacular about them. Somehow, as players, they just had the right fit. Bono ended up being one of the the great rock vocalists. He didn't start out that way, but he just developed into this incredible vocalist. Edge, who you couldn't argue that he's any really fantastic, flashy, amazing guitarist, but he made his guitar sing in ways that no one else had ever done it. Matter of fact, if you want to hear an interesting something interesting about Edge, go listen to Bruce Springsteen inducting U2 into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And the whole thing is poetic, the way he talks about U2, but especially the part where he talks about Edge and what he brought to the music. And Bruce Springsteen's great with words anyway, but you should listen to it, especially what he said about Edge. Larry Mullen Jr. had a kind of a different approach to playing the drums. He didn't always play these straight ahead rock beats. He was playing these using some toms to create a similar beat. So he was doing things. And then Adam Clayton, the bassist, some of these songs, like go back and listen to New Year's Day. That bass line that he put in there, you couldn't have that song without it. So anyway, you just had these four guys that were kind of on their own, kind of average. They were pretty good. But they brought the greatest things out of each other, and they made this incredible band. So anyway, by the time they reached this point, I mean, you just like, okay, guys, we get it. You guys are amazing. And so this is a cassette tape, and the reason I wanted to break out this cassette tape was that it has something. Not a lot of tapes that you would buy that had been put out by record companies had screws in them so you could open it up and look inside. Most tapes that you would buy that record companies put out were sealed shut, glued somehow, and you couldn't get into them. So I thought this would be a fun one just to open up and look inside at the tape itself. And looking back at this album, though, this album sold, when you combine what sold in the United States and Europe, it was well over 10 million records, 10 million copies, 10 million copies of this sold. I mean, it was absolutely incredible, the sales. And, Zoo Station, the way that thing starts out, the unusual voice sound that they use, they put this kind of distorted kind of flange on his voice, and I actually love that song. Even better than The Real Thing. That might be my favorite song on here. It's so great. The first single that I remember came off this album was The Fly, and Bono had those shades on, and that video was really cool. And so, but then it ended up, and that was not the best song on here. It just kept getting better. One became a huge hit. It's still, people redo it and play it still. Until the End of the World, I don't remember that one very well. Who's Gonna Ride Your Wild Horses? That was actually a really good song. I don't remember So Cruel. The Fly, like I just mentioned, that was a great one. Mysterious Ways, oh man. The beat in that song, she moves in mysterious ways. That might contend for being the best song on this album too. That was so great. I don't remember how these other songs went, but man, it was a great album. It was so good. So, and it's always interesting looking. I didn't buy cassette tapes very often because they weren't as fun as records. They were so much smaller. But look at this one. I'm gonna scan this under the. This is kind of crazy. Look at how enormous this is. That's the inside, and then the outside, more things to read, so small that at my age I cannot read them, and then all the pictures that you would have seen on the album. Looks like I bought this at Wax Trax too. You've heard me talk about Wax Trax in other videos. It's a record store in Denver, Colorado, and I go there a lot. I'm actually flying out there this weekend. I'll probably stop back by and see what they have available there. Anyway, this was really spectacular. This was a great album. So anyway, let's take a look at this. We're gonna bust this open, find a little screwdriver, and show you what's on the inside. Now, normally I don't open these when it's not on the leader because the messing with the actual oxide tape can get a little bit challenging. And something interesting I just noticed when I look at this, see that right there? This is a chrome tape. That was kind of unusual with tapes that record companies put out. So this was a Type 2. So Type 1 was the normal, Type 2 was the chrome, and then Type 3 was metal. Sorry, Type 4 was metal. Type 3 was a variation on the oxide tape or regular tape. So this was cool. This was a chrome tape, and it was on Island Records. So let's open this up and take a look at what U2's Achtung Baby looks like inside and see if there's some magic in there that made this such a great album. So we're going to go through and albums that have the little screws, there's usually 5 of them, and they're on the 4 corners in the middle. Traditionally, if it didn't say side A or side B, because some of the tapes you'd buy at the store wouldn't have that and you'd denote it yourself, wouldn't have labels on them. Side A is almost always the side that has the screws. And there was only one company that I know of that didn't do it that way, and it was BASF, and it was side B that had the screws, which kind of strange, but anyway, I'm trying to get that. Why can't I get that seated in there? There we go. There's that one. There's 3, 4, and there's 5. And so now we're going to lift this off. We're going to look inside U2's Achtung, baby. Oop, this one's still a little bit stuck. All right, there we go. We're lifting this off. Actually, let's flip it over so you can see this. So this is very common inside tapes, is to have this little kind of gasket, and you can see that it has these ridges. So the purpose of this gasket was to keep the tape from rubbing on the housing, the plastic here. The purpose of this, so then the purpose of these ridges was when the tape was spooling up on either side, it gave it just this tiny little bit of pressure, you know, in this direction and in this direction, that made it spool on more evenly. So you'd get this more flat looking. When you'd look at cassette tapes that didn't have these ridges, it doesn't line up or feed onto the reel quite as cleanly as it does with the ridges. It just puts that tiny little bit of pressure to keep it in line on the spool. So then when you look into this tape further, you'll see that it has these wheels right here. These things spin freely, and you'll actually see here a lot of tapes have a little piece of metal there that kind of floats in that spot. This one has these posts that are part of the plastic injection mold, and it was a little more of a solid way of doing this. And then you can see there's one on either side, and these things will spin freely. The tape here itself, or the reels, I showed this on another video, but you'll see right there, see that little dot that's right there on the reel? You'll see another one right there. So you can see, you know, there's this standard, you know, these spokes or whatever that's going along, but then there's that one little odd ball spot right there and right there. The purpose of those is that if you were to spin this tape, there's another video you can watch where I show this, but if we spun this tape all the way to the end, that right there is where the tape, the actual tape or the leader tape right there connects to the reel. So that little thing actually pops out, the end of the tape gets pushed in there, and then that gets popped back in, and that's what holds the tape to the reel, to this thing, is that little tiny thing right there. And different tapes used slightly different ways of doing this, but anyway, that's how this particular type of tape did it. Then right down here, kind of see how this flops around. It's usually better to work with this with the leader because it doesn't flop as much. This right here, this little piece of metal, this is a magnetic shield. Always sits right there. And then this right here is a pressure pad. And the purpose of this pressure pad, you see, you have to keep in mind that when a tape is playing, it's making physical contact with what's called the playhead in the tape deck. As it's spinning, it rubs across the playhead, and it's that physical connection that it makes to the playhead that picks up the magnetic signal, and then it, you know, turns it back into sound. And so I'll show you how this works. I have there it is. I have a little playhead that we pulled out of a Sony. Let's see if I got that in there right. Yeah, I got it. That we pulled out of a Sony tape deck. This is a kind of a standard playhead that we pulled out of a tape deck, so we could show you this. And then the way this would work, if you can see I'm going to turn this, maybe get a little more light on it. You can see right there is the pressure pad, and if you can imagine, it's going to be hard to actually show it here correctly, but the tape would get sandwiched in between this playhead and that pressure pad, like so. And that ensured that you'd get a nice solid connection from the tape onto the playhead. So, and what happens a lot of times with these older tapes is this pressure pad, you can see that it's connected to this little mount. You can see that when I pulled it out, this little copper mount. What happens over time is the adhesive that holds it to that mount just wears off as it ages. And eventually, and then it'll just fall off. And then when you play the tape, it'll sound awful because the tape is no longer making a solid connection to the playhead, and so it sounds bad. And a lot of people don't realize, the reason a tape might sound bad is it's that simple, that little piece of felt has fallen off. And we have a big bag full of these things here in the studio because it's so common for those to fall off. It's one of the first things we check here in the studio, because what we take audio cassettes that people send to us and convert them into digital. And one of the first things we look for, because this is so common in aging tapes, is that little pressure pad falling off. And we'll put it on, and if it needs to be replaced, we can just we like I said, we have bags of them, and we can just put a new one in place to make the tape sound good. It's something so simple, but it's a critical part of the overall way this thing works, is to have that little pressure pad. So anyway, that's what the inside of Achtung Baby looks like, and there isn't anything that makes it. I don't see magic coming out of this anywhere, but this was really magic. This album, it was so spectacular. The music was so great, and that's it right there. So anyway, I'm going to put this thing back together. And by the way, if you like these videos, we've put out a ton of these things over the years, talking about cassette tapes and all kinds of different analog media. If you like them, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, and leave comments if there's anything that you would like us to see, like us to make a video of. Just let us know. We have so much cool stuff here in the studio, and we'd love to make especially records, thousands of them. And we'd love your suggestions on what we should make going forward as far as videos go. So we're going to take this, and when I lift this up, what's going to happen probably is that gasket's going to fall off. Ooh, no, it stayed. And we're going to be kind of ginger putting it back on, because when you're not using the leader tape, sometimes the oxide tape, well, in this case it's I think it's chromium oxide, as I say, it will start coming out. But you'll see now how see if that's focused, how the tape kind of sits behind this plastic. When you're putting it back together, it's really easy for that to come onto the outside, and that can get really maddening trying to get it back in. So now we're going to put the screws back in, and this tape will act as if we never even touched it. It'll just go back to normal. I'm going to show you one other interesting thing about tapes like this that you buy from, that record companies manufactured. That's kind of interesting. And give me just 1 second to get these screws back in. There's 5 of them here. And I tell you, I thought U2 was such a great band, and I hear a lot of people give them trouble, give them a hard time, and don't appreciate them, kind of like some people like me, like I do. I was a metalhead when I was a teenager, and so I didn't want to like them, but I ended up loving them. So let me show you one other thing. When you look at the top of these tapes, get that focus again right here. You'll see, it's kind of hard to tell, but you'll see that there's a hole right there and a hole right there. You see that? What those things are is that's write protection. And what that means is, when you would have, let's see if I can grab another cassette that doesn't have those in it. Okay, that one does. No. So here's another tape that's a blank tape, and you'll see that there's something in the way right there. That's not an open hole, where here, that's an open hole. And what that did was it prevented you from recording on the tape. Because one of the benefits of having a cassette tape was that you could record on them. That was one of the reasons you had a cassette player, so you could push record and record whatever you wanted to on it. Well, when you would pop. So when you would remove those things, when those weren't there, what would happen is when the tape went into the tape player, there was this little thing that pushed in like this, and it basically would disable the record button, and it would disable the erase button, or the erase head and the record head. It would disable those, and so you could not record over the tape. I think on some tape decks it might have even prevented you from pushing down the record. Anyway, it wouldn't allow you to record over the tape, so it would prevent you from recording over Achtung Baby, and that's all it was. It was these little tabs. And so when you would buy a tape at the store, you could record on it, speak into it, record music or whatever. And then if you wanted to make sure that you couldn't record over it, you'd pop these out. And the way it worked then was the little tab, as I recall, it's on the left-hand side. So if you didn't want to record over side A, you would pop out the one on the left. If you didn't want to record over side B, you'd pop out the one on the right. It was always on the left of whatever side you were looking at. I'm pretty sure that's correct, because I've a few times in my life had to overwrite it with my finger to try to work on a tape deck. So, and then what you would do if you wanted to record over this, you could literally put tape over the top of this, just put some Scotch tape, and then you could record over. So you could record over this tape, just putting a little Scotch tape over it, put this in a tape deck, and you could record over it. So anyway, that's Achtung Baby. That's the cassette tape for Achtung Baby. Thought that'd be kind of fun for you to see that, since it's not often you can get these tapes from record companies where you can actually open them up and look inside. But that's what the inside of Achtung Baby looks like. So anyway, once again, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have old audio videotapes that you need to convert to digital, if you have old audio and videotapes, you do need to convert them to digital because they are deteriorating. Go to Audiomover, audiomover.com, and get your order started there, or tell other people about that, because there's a lot of people that need to do that. You don't want to see your old personal audio and video tapes deteriorate so you can't even use them again. So let your family and friends know about us, and send them our way, audiomover.com. And with that, have a fantastic day.